This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Is faith making a comeback? That is the topic of today's 40 Days for Life podcast. And joining me is somebody who has no need whatsoever for his faith to make a comeback because it is alive and well, and that is Steve Carlin.
Accurate.
Facts. And Heather's here also. Heather is controversial today because you're wearing the old school Coalition for Life polo. That thing has held up well.
Yeah.
That's 20 years old, at least.
Well, point that out, why don't you?
Because Heather's, you're about to turn 57. It's amazing. You look great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
congratulations. So those shirts, when we got those, there were some hiccups.
They're well made, let's just say that.
I think who was born, when Bailey was born, the picture of like me first holding Bailey, which is in our house, I had the blue and the white one. Remember, like the sleeves were white. It almost looked like a football jersey. We were trying to go, I don't know, like University of Kentucky, 1998.
So was it cool or not cool? Like bottom line.
It was cool, and it's awful now.
Okay.
And so, but the picture still exists, and it's like me holding my baby girl, so we can't get rid of it. I'm just look at it, and I'm like, what were we thinking? But back in the day, we were legit. So then that was the next one, the one Heather's wearing, and it was like super awesome. And you probably don't remember, but you remember Chris Newman?
Oh, yeah.
Great guy.
Dr. Chris Newman now.
He became a physician who we highly recommend, although I would never go to him. But he came, I know him too well. Okay, so he worked he was like part-time at the Coalition for Life.
Yes.
And I believe he was there because he and I freaked out. We were launching 40 Days for Life nationally. So we had the current logo. We we had the new logo. And we did one campaign, and a guy like drove by and saw it, and he had, I think, a relatively small embroidery thing, like company. We didn't have any clothes. We didn't have any gear. It was just like whatever. And he brought by for our whole staff Ping, as in the golf brand, 40 Days for Life fleeces.
Ooh.
That were super bad to the bone. I wore that thing forever, especially going to early vigils. And of course, people were like, how do I get one of those? Like, you can't. We don't have a store. We don't have anything. You know, it was like way, way too early for all that. And I guess somebody now is like, why don't we have Ping? The price markup, it doesn't work. They'd be too expensive, so we don't sell them. But we had these like Ping fleeces that with the logo on them. They were so awesome. And then I never wore the Coalition for Life anything after that. After I got that Ping fleece. It was like 100 degrees outside. I'm wearing the Ping fleece.
Gosh.
It was so comfortable. It was awesome. But so you kept that.
Yeah, why not? It worked.
It does work.
I also am known to not get rid of things, so
You're a hoarder.
I am a hoarder. However,
but you don't have any cats. We've covered this on the podcast.
No, I don't have cats. No,
You're a regular hoarder lady.
I keep my hoarding under control, but it is genetic. It is in my family, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I want to hear about that, actually. You were going to say something?
What year approximately is this shirt from?
I think 2007.
You're exactly right.
That's when I got.
06 was the blue and white weird one that I was talking about.
2007 is when I got officially like, okay, fine, I'll start doing this regularly involved.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was like, stop bothering me, y'all. Like, I'll do it a couple times here and there. And
You were referred to me to hire. Somebody referred you.
I bet I know
Blame.
a few people.
Yeah.
Blame.
You, I believe, referred Bobby, who's still here.
Bobby was here before me.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know Bobby until I came.
I think Elizabeth referred Bobby. And so it was like, you got to hire Bobby. And I just knew Bobby as a volunteer, and he's cool, and he speaks Spanish, and he's a good sidewalk counselor, and he's a dude and all that. They're like, you got to hire him. And I remember he was into the jeans with the sandals.
Yes.
He could pull that off where you're like, you got jeans and a t-shirt on, but you're wearing flip-flops, and it worked. And if I do it, they're like, what are you doing? But with Bobby, he was cool enough to pull it off. So that was good. I was like, okay, he can recruit college kids. He's cool. But yeah, that's funny to see that shirt. You just sprung that on
And
us.
it matches. Look, we still have these
matches
OG pens.
OG
Coalition for Life pens here at the office.
There's probably a few litterheads floating around here somewhere. We didn't mean to cut you out of that conversation, Steve. I apologize. I didn't realize you were still sitting there.
No, it's all good. It's all good. You actually gave Heather a nice introduction, so some of the YouTube viewers, I think, will be.
And I gave you a nice introduction.
Yeah,
saying
it's
that
true.
Your faith had no need for a comeback.
Because
okay.
last time, or at least recently, you introduced me by calling me a racist or something. What was it on the Gen X episode?
I think you were a Nazi.
A Nazi, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just racism wasn't strong enough, frankly.
Oh, gosh.
You accused me of trying to build a master race, I believe.
Yeah, you were trying to build the master race. Yeah, in your humble
Fact check
abode.
false. I would like the record to show. Not trying to do that.
Just for the record, I'm not trying to build the master race. He's lying. That's all he thinks about. Okay, before we get into this, I got a little bit of a banter here. This will be short, I promise. So it's summer. It's late July. It's coming to an end. I know you're entering your summer depression because you're preparing for winter, which I think arrives on like August 18th. But football season's coming. But movie season is coming to an end. And I was reflecting because there's some good movies that came out this summer. We've talked about.
Don't rush it. We still have like half of July left.
We do. And actually, it's kind of interesting and it's controversial if people know about it. I think it comes out this weekend. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. But have you seen Joaquin Phoenix, who I really like? Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash movie. He's fantastic. Mm-hmm. He's great in Signs with Mel Gibson. He's great. He's a great actor. I think he's probably crazy in real life, but he's a great actor. He's like old Sheriff Cowboy. And he and the mayor don't get along on how to handle COVID.
Ooh.
It's New Mexico in 2020. That's going to be really interesting for history because COVID, as you know, you love COVID. You think it aged well. But most people don't think that it aged well.
Do we really want to go to the theaters to watch a movie about COVID?
Yes.
Really?
It depends.
Early.
It depends.
It depends. Which side are you on, Joaquin? It's going to be interesting to see how Hollywood handles this because the whole like vaccines, Fauci, it's a perfect time for it because it's 5 years later, right? So everybody's still kind of angry about it, but they don't want to think about it. But in like 10 years, we're like, I don't even want to think about it anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. But one is for it, one's against it. It's going to be one of those things.
I would like to think that in 500 years, Fauci is a curse word, and the linguists are looking back to try to figure out the origins of it.
Shut the Fauci up.
Yeah.
That's like a common thing that you yell at like a baseball game. I think so.
Like, let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brain. Let's go, Fauci.
I was at a gathering of like a men's like Bible study group, and somehow or another, someone mentioned Fauci. Like, Fauci, that guy's what tarring and feathering was invented for.
Ooh.
And one of the guys was like, "All right, let's go." That's ready for my rant.
I just think that this actually wasn't what my rant was about, but I'll skip that because this is better. But look, I forget the name of the movie, but
Okay.
Joaquin is Sheriff Cowboy, which he looks really cool because you don't really see him as like rough guy a whole lot. And I believe he's against locking everybody down.
Okay.
And the mayor's for it. I may have it mixed up, but I don't think that's the case. Or I think that's the case. So here's the options. We did something right in 2020, and now, with evil Donald Trump in office, we're back to being irresponsible. It either has to be that, or it's locking down the families, people going crazy, showing a little bit of like grandma dying, pulling at both sides. But overall, we're either going to be free or we're not going to be. And the question to you, Steve Carlin, is which do you think direction they're going to go?
Have you heard about this before today?
Hey, this is the first COVID movie. That's why I'm bringing it up.
It's called Eddington.
You looked great. Eddington. I think that's the town in New Mexico.
It sounds like it.
Please tell me this is a new place, an actual place, and it's a true story.
Ooh.
That would be cool.
I have a hard time thinking that Hollywood is going to make what do the kids call it? A based take on it. However,
Mission Impossible, Top Gun 2. You're forgetting there's some hope in the world.
Yeah, but this would then be admitting that they're,
the movie,
idiots.
there's no way that the lockdown guy can be a hero in 2025.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is like if they go that direction, then you're like, that was a really dumb idea for a movie.
This.
Right. And Hollywood has a lot of dumb ideas and whatever. But if it's not, it's like, how far do they go? Are you like separating the kid? Like, is he going around on Easter Sunday knocking on doors? How many people are in there? Like that would be fun.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing. I mean, Newsom in California was doing all this insane stuff. He's arresting single women on the beach because they didn't have a mask on. They're out alone.
You don't have to convince me,
no,
Sean.
you're the one that
This is what I'm thinking here. We've kind of had like our annual summer podcast crew movie.
By the way, sorry to cut you up. By the time this comes out, or by the time a lot of people listen to it, the movie may be out. We may know. It may be on like Fox News or whatever.
Yeah.
Praising or criticizing. So we just need that disclaimer.
We've done Top Gun together. We've done both Mission Impossibles. We've done Twisters. I feel like we need to double up and have a second podcast team movie night to see this.
Yeah, I do too.
This is one, I'm not a walk out guy, but if the mayor is a good guy, I'm out.
I'm gone. And no, I'm not. I lied because number one, that's a good reason to get like the big refill popcorn because then you're like, I don't know, I don't want to get ripped off. I got to eat another thing of popcorn, and I got to see. Maybe they're tricking you. I think they're going to try to trick us.
Okay.
I think it's going to be like most towns where the sheriff is like, absolutely, this is serious, and we do the headlines, and the spread, and not enough mask, and the panic. I hope they take us through that, because that's the way it was. No, I think they should be realistic with it.
No spoilers, but here's a little small
careful.
part of the synopsis. The film delves into themes of fear, anxiety, and the breakdown of shared reality, particularly during the time of the pandemic and the social unrest of 2020, such as the George Floyd protests.
Oh, so, okay, it's the racist COVID movie.
It could be.
It could be pro-racist.
And it's not based on a true story, supposedly.
It's not. Okay, that would have been great. Now, what do you think?
I think I'm more convinced that this is going to be good. And I occupy this weird space. Like, when you meet people who are super unself-aware and they just off, and then there's people who are very self-aware and they have good composure. I occupy this middle ground where I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm not terribly well-adjusted. And it comes out in
very
COVID.
Good description of yourself.
Yeah.
I might add.
Unself-aware or unaware?
I'm just self-aware enough.
I'm not terribly adjusted. Right. There's another T-shirt for you.
Yeah. Because COVID is an area where, like, I can make fun of conspiracy theory people. I can make fun of, like, the Earth is flat. We never landed on the moon, and I will. And every last COVID thing, I'll be like,
"Yeah,
that's it. This is what they were warning about. That's what they say. That's what they do. That's how they get you." I am COVID extremist guy. I'm admitting that. That's the not well-adjusted part of me.
Well, and you were in Madison. So my whole thing with COVID, we were coming home from spring break, and they canceled the rodeo. This is going to be funny to a lot of the listeners. That was a huge deal.
That's terrible.
And like people are like, I've said that, and they're like, laugh like you rednecks, Oh, now it's a big deal. Now it's a crisis because the rodeo's canceled. I'm like, yes. The rodeo is like 35 million people a year go through it. It's a month long. They canceled the freaking rodeo. Like that's really scary. So that's when I knew it was serious. And then of course, like I had fear. Like, does everybody die from it? And then actually producer John early on, before all the craziness, he's like, yeah, there's this disease and all this. I'm like, he's a nut. He's got a ponytail. And he explained it to me. We were driving to San Antonio. You remember this? Oh, yeah. And we were, Sean didn't listen. So he he said, and I'm like, oh, wow. I'm kind of like wide-eyed. And he's like, yeah, but apparently it's like you're super overweight or you're old or you have a pre-existing condition. So I was like, okay, I'm good. So now I'm just listening to producer John for massive medical pandemic advice.
You wouldn't go to Dr. Chris, but you'll go to Dr. John, who's not a doctor.
How well did he that age?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good job.
You're a genius. Thank you. Many people have said that. Not really. But yeah, so I got my first professional medical advice from producer John. And then like 3 weeks later, it all hit. Okay. So I remember, we gotta adjust we gotta flatten the curve. We're gonna flatten the curve. And so the lockdown, I was like 2 weeks. Okay. We're all in this together, all that crap. Thank you for our medical workers.
Yeah.
Thank you for the medical workers. We quit thanking them after a while because they were trying to kill us. But so we did that. And then like in that time period, I would say Sean's 2 weeks of like, okay, I'm going to of course, I'm a germaphobe anyways, and I hand sanitize like when I get home from the gas station anyways, but like I got to hand sanitize the credit card and all the crazy things we did for like 10 days. During that time, I went for a jog and I listened to Dave Ramsey because I like Dave Ramsey and I listened to him. And I was like, I'm interested in his take on this. And he was the first person I heard. And he's like, look, we got to take precautions. I don't want to say a lot. And I was like, oh, this is good because it's early on. And he's like, but I got a lot of problems with what's happening. And I was like, okay, but I mean, come on, it's reasonable for 2 weeks. And even I was like kind of mentally pushing back on Dave Ramsey. So shout out to Dave Ramsey. But I just thought, yeah, he's got a huge show. He's got a huge company. He's a very, very, well-respected, widely known public figure. And he was the first one to be like, this is all BS. And even I was like, wow, I mean, it's only been a week. What if all your relatives die, next week? So, and then by April 1st, I was like, I'm ignoring everything and acting like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's what they need to take us through. So what I just explained from producer John's brilliant medical advice to Dave Ramsey is what everybody has their own version of.
Yes.
Where were you? What were you thinking or acting the first month of COVID? And that's why this movie is very intriguing because no matter what happens, because remember, we were all going to get sick and die, and then George Floyd died, and all of a sudden we needed to riot without masks, and that wasn't dangerous to our health. It was just one of those things where I'm excited about it because of the time period. And of course, we have kids old enough that remember like their schools and all that craziness. And it's just interesting to see how they handle the first COVID movie. Because if it's like woke and they're like, and now look at the irresponsibility just 5 years later, like the words come on the screen at the end. Donald Trump is a Nazi and he hates vaccines or whatever they say at the end, even though he created the vaccine. That whole thing, if they do that, then the second COVID movie that comes out like in 6 months or a year with Tom Cruise, who's yelling at everybody for taking Ritalin, like he'll be it'll be awesome. It'll like Maverick from Top Gun will come and like drop a bomb on Fauci. And that's how the movie will end. That'll be the roll the friggin' credits. Because if they blow the first COVID movie of like, this was great and democracy ruined it, that'll be gold. That's why I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be practical.
The worst case scenario is that it's a, quote, nuanced take on COVID. I don't want any nuance here.
The most important thing is that we didn't lose our faith. Which brings us
Shame
to our
on
topic.
you, Heather.
Hey, it's time. Let's get going.
If we know our listeners well, we know they want to hear about one thing and one thing only, and that's COVID.
I'm going to argue I have at least a third of the listeners, probably more, that are like, let's
that
go
would be
in.
Short. That was not short.
Let's go.
All right. Here we go. The numbers. Let's just go right into the Pew Research, okay? Because this whole thing is all of a sudden corporate America and some of the major sports leagues and just the whole trend of like Family's good. Christianity's not the devil.
Back, baby.
We're back, baby. All right. In 2007, 78% of Americans called themselves Christians, and just 16% claimed no religious affiliation. Since then, Christians dropped to just 60% of the population in 2022, but that number has stabilized over the last 5 years. It's even ticked up slightly as 62% of Americans now call themselves Christians. Are you saying that Obama made us pagan? I mean, 07 to 22?
Maybe pagans gave us Obama. I don't know.
I know you're thinking of some
came
family members. Okay. All right. A little less than half of Americans pray daily. A little less than half? No, it's got to be like 20%. You think half of America prays every day?
It's at least according to Pew Research.
Okay,
You never
no,
know if people tell the truth or
But
not.
Pew's, okay.
It's
That's
a-
true.
it's a
I
cred-
pray. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, as you know, I've had people flip me off as they leave Planned Parenthood saying, F you, we pray too. So
Yeah.
maybe they're in that almost half.
Oh my goodness.
Along with keep your rosaries off my ovaries, it does rhyme. F you, we pray too. It's like we got to pray just to make it today by MC Hammer. All right. A third of Americans attend religious services at least monthly. And in the last point, generally, the younger demographic, the less religious. But 18 to 24-year-olds are no less religious than 24 to 34-year-olds. That's very interesting because the 24 to 34-year-olds are getting married and starting a family usually.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room for nonsense once you've got kids in the picture.
That's just the growth, though. That's the point of the stat, is that it's not a dip for the 24 to 34-year-olds. It's a rise for the 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah.
Are just as religious as the people a decade older than them. Okay, this is fun and shockingly encouraging. A Catholic resurgence. I can't tell you how many Protestant radio shows I've been on talking about this. They're like fast, and we want to hear that.
And I've seen a lot
Yeah.
of this conversation on various.
Like when we hear like the
television
Baptists
shows.
have decided to defend a marriage or whatever, we're like, yes, okay, that's good. So we're sort of rooting for each other these days. All right, so the Catholic diocese report across America, 30 to 70% increases in conversions over the last year. Now, a conversion for those who aren't Catholic means you became Catholic. Okay.
Yeah.
So 30 to 70% increases is the range, which is
year over year.
fantastic.
And what that makes me, okay, so that's interesting that it's an increase, but we've been hearing for so many years, Christians in general, but Catholics specifically, more and more Catholics are leaving the church. And so it makes me wonder, has the rate of those who considered themselves Catholic and then leaving the church stayed the same, risen, or fallen? Like, how does this balance out?
Well, it's different, even though we were reprimanded by you, Heather. It ties into COVID. So there's the stat. It does. There's the stat like pre-COVID, which is like, I left the church because the priest was mean, or he didn't like my outfit, or whatever. Just the petty stuff.
Petty stuff or legit awful experiences.
Exactly. But then there's a pandemic. We're going to close the churches, the worst decision in the history of the USCCB. And we're not going to allow people to mass. And if you're sick in a hospital, sorry, we're not going to come give you last rites. You're screwed. And, that's it.
And the USCCB is the United States Catholic Conference of
Yes.
Bishops, so all
Yes.
the bishops of the country.
They did not handle COVID well. I feel fine saying that. They love 40 Days for Life. We love them. But, that was not...
I don't know too many that did.
They're one of many,
Yeah.
I think, bodies of institutions that did not handle COVID well. So it's not like they're alone. I got to hand it to Cardinal Donato. I mean, we were back at Mass in Houston.
In April.
In April. Yeah, it was that quick.
Because it was the same in Austin as
I
well.
remember I would no longer bring up religion or church to Steve because I actually felt really bad for you. And
We were the second diocese in the country to reopen.
what?
Yeah.
Because was Morelino still there?
No, our
your
current
new guy
bishop
is
is
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's what happened.
But I thought that the state wouldn't allow it, of Wisconsin.
There was my kid's school, so there's different timelines here, so nobody fact check like the timelines, but all the stuff I'm going to say is true. Our kid's school sued the state And it was really remarkable because it became an outlet for the whole country. Like there were hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing into the legal fund in like the first 48 hours. And our school won, and our school was able to reopen. And then basically when the state came in, or the county came in, and they said, by the way, you're allowed to have like 10% capacity at Mass, and we're going to send people to the churches and count. And our bishop was like, I'm giving you 1 week to retract that. After that, we're suing you. And so we were the second ones to fully.
Wow. That's amazing.
All right.
And unfortunately,
Many of the
too
bishops,
rare.
many of the bishops did not handle COVID well. Some did a great job. I got to amend that.
But
Okay.
I will say, though,
But
that
you see what I'm saying? Got to mean to go off on COVID, but the whole like people just leave the church in normal times.
yes.
Was like steady. COVID hit and everybody left the church because when the churches opened, they were like, well, we watched it on TV. It must not really. Do we really believe in the Eucharist? And we didn't even have to go.
Right. It set a really bad precedent for a lot of people.
I have a hot take.
Okay.
I think it's possible that when you extend the timeline long enough, there will come a day where we will look back on COVID as a net positive.
I was thinking the same thing.
I do too. I don't think that's a hot take because I think people who.
In terms of faith, not.
Well, you're not.
Many things.
Hey.
Yes.
It's like Walker Piercy. Like, at least what makes us human, when you sin, you feel like you're sinning. Well, nowadays, there's no sensation to it because it's like acceptable behavior. And so, similarly, if you skip Mass, you skip Mass. I don't go to church anymore. The hell with those people. But now you can't go to Mass. And that's just different. And maybe you're more afraid. Maybe you are sick. Maybe, you're locked down for a year. I do think it's different when you don't have access to it. Although a lot of parishes have said they just never really recovered. But when you ask a few follow-up questions, they're basically like, it was dead weight. They really weren't coming to Mass. They weren't tithing. It's just that,
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a church, let's just use a round number. The church has 100 people in, and 80 of them don't believe what the church teaches. And then post-COVID, you have a church that has 20 people who believe. Are you really any worse off than you were beforehand? I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Well, one of the safety nets that I think hindered the church is that people who didn't give gave more because of all the handouts that the stupid government did. And also the tithing didn't go down. The income didn't go down. In some ways, it went more because people felt they're like, I can get online and give. I don't have to do that in person. So the parishes and the diocese saw a lot of money come in. So it's not, the financial reason to open the church is we're going to go broke. People aren't coming, so therefore they're not giving. But the giving actually went up. So
Plus, there's a lot of government money changing hands.
Yeah, well.
Like we all thought that everybody was going to go broke, and so I think people were more generous.
Absolutely. And then the government bailed everybody out. Okay, so the Diocese of Cleveland, Ohio had to move its rite of election, which is the process to become Catholic, which, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a 1 to 2 year process. So it's not showing up at the church and being like, all right, I thought y'all were fruitcakes, but I like the statues, I'll convert. It doesn't work like that. It's a process. It's a long process. You got to get a sponsor. You've got to be approved. Producer John knows this because he's becoming Catholic. And so all this stuff goes on. That's not true. He doesn't believe in God,
Unbeknownst to a lot of people.
He doesn't believe in God. I take that back. It's a process. So they had to move their RCA program into the conference center, which is unheard of. For those Catholics listening, they're like, "Oh my word!"
Yeah, that's really. And I noticed in my own experience, even just this past spring, there's always the most candidates that will come in at Easter Mass, right?
Right. That's when most of them
vigil. But I go to a small parish. And I don't even know how many people we had come in at Easter this past year, but I know that. But I expected it to be a decent amount because our parish is growing a lot. It's growing exponentially. It has been for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're kind of busting at the seams. And I would have thought if we had 30 people that had come into the church in our parish, that would have been a huge number.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know what the number is. I think it was at least that amount. But several weeks later, we had another round of people coming into the church at Mass, and it was 30 people.
Wow.
And I was shocked that it was that many people in this non-Easter or Easter Vigil Mass. And again, small parish. So it is interesting to see that. I think we're seeing a lot of polls that are showing that people are becoming Christian at higher rates. And it's actually can be confusing. I may have mentioned this on a podcast before, but this definitely relates here. You're hearing a lot of what seems to be contradictory information, especially about Gen Z, that Gen Z is the most religious generation and also the most secular generation. So which is it, you might say? Is it that they're more religious or more secular? And the answer is both.
Right.
Because they're moving from the middle and going more extreme one way or the other.
They look like our politics. There's no middle.
There's not a lot of middle ground. So you're seeing a lot more of Gen Z wanting to become involved, wanting to grow their faith and involved in a church community. Evangelical, a lot of other traditions and Catholic in the Catholic Church as well. And then you're seeing a lot more angry, secular, atheist, no religion, non-binary. It all comes together usually. That is a religion itself, actually, but they would consider themselves non-religious, secular, and so I find that really interesting. I don't know if that's a good thing that we're becoming more extreme and there's less people in the middle, because then to me there's less people that are going to be. Well, I guess it's only bad if they're going the one extreme.
I think it's a very, very good thing. And as Steve put it politically, it's the death of the Mitt Romney Republican. But here's why it's good, is because the young people that are becoming Catholic or getting involved in their faith are very traditional, very conservative, very pro-marriage, pro-life, and all of that. Then on the other side, the furries and the overthrow the government and the Trump is Nazis, that's not sustainable over time. And we know that generations previously, no matter where they start, they always end up more conservative with age. So I'm not worried about the left part of it, because we know statistically speaking that they're only going to get more conservative, to use these terms, with age, or more religious with age.
Yeah.
That's always been the trend.
Yeah.
But if you're starting out where half of them are, and I know some of these trends are annoying, but when you have like the trad wife fad and the social media stuff and like the I do want to get married, I do want to have kids.
Yeah.
That senior class of 2024 is the most conservative class we've, in the history of keeping track with it. We talked about that study a lot. The fact that 40% of women 30 and under voted for Trump. Nobody, if we'd have said that on the podcast in October, people would have been like, y'all are idiots. 40% of women 30 and under voted for Trump. That's unheard of. That's why it was a landslide. But that kind of stuff I think it's very, very encouraging, not just on the political front, but we see it in our parish. Our parish is growing. We're old at our parish. We have these young families with like 3 or 4 little kids. And as my daughters say, Dad, that was you and Mom a long time ago. Thank
cute.
you for that. It is. It's like, I can just picture y'all, like we're all babies and you're like, young dad and all that. And I'm like, what am I now? She's like, you're older.
Baby face.
Yeah, there we go.
The emptying out of the middle, I think, is also good as proven by Scripture, because what does the Lord say?
Yes,
I wish you were either hot or cold.
Hot or cold, yes.
Are you saying that?
As I was saying that. But I like this. In Los Angeles, also had 5,500 new converts in terms of the Catholic converts, which is interesting. And that can be converts from atheism, from just agnosticism. It can be revert. It can be converts from another
It's not reverts,
faith.
though. It's not reverts.
That's not reverts?
It's
You don't
not
think that counts
Catholics.
that?
It's not. That is their RCIA. So it's not Catholics who came back to the church.
But there's a lot of Catholics who were baptized Catholic, and that's it.
I know.
And so they go through RCIA because they
but I don't think they're not in the final stats.
Yeah.
It's not. I know who you're talking about.
I got you.
But that's like our 75% no-show rate number. That's a lot of people. We don't even count it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that are like, I was raised Catholic or whatever, and then I grew up. When they come back, they just have to go to confession which is available anytime you want it, and then you're back. But we don't track that like we do the you're not Catholic or you're whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that's what's impressive about these numbers, actually. These aren't like Catholics who are like finally getting their act together.
Also, not just America.
Well, no. So LA was 5,500. That's a lot. That's a lot, especially for that archdiocese. Okay, so it's not just America. Austria. Good day, mate.
Nope. Austria, not Australia.
She fell for it. It's from Dumb and Dumber. Put another shrimp on the bobby.
But there's a lot of people who aren't going to hear
The lady said, where are you from? Austria. Ah! Put another shrimp on the bobby. I know that that's another country in Europe. Okay, so Austria had an 85% increase in converts. What in the world? That's awesome.
And France, as my brother once said, I had the chance to go to France 11 years ago, and my brother said, I'm glad I don't have to go. They're a bunch of wusses. Not anymore. 10,000 conversions, the highest number on record, and most of them are between 18 and 25 years old.
A lot of those, because of in France, you were either Catholic or an insane atheist. Thanks for all the French atheists. Boy, did they help ruin the world. Jean-Paul Sartre. Oof. Glad he's not around anymore. Okay, so 10, in other words, there's a lot of just lapsed Catholics in France. These aren't those people.
And we'll get into, as we go on, the big question, we've shared like the good news here, right? There's a lot of good news here, but why? This seemed like Christianity was last one out the door, turn off the lights, and now we're back. What has happened? We talked about COVID a little bit, but it's more complex than that. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, let's get into that, especially after France, because when you look at the demographics, when you look at Generation Z, they were, quote, sort of free from the religious baggage, right? It's not like they can be like the boomers. And I have more compassion on the boomers than I used to, where it's like, you go to church because you go to church. That's like what your dad is yelling at you, and he doesn't.
Because I said so.
Doesn't say that he loves you. He doesn't explain anything of why the church teaches this. He knows you're on contraception. He really doesn't care. He doesn't really say anything. And there's that kind of thing of like, do we really believe this? So they leave. Now, Generation Z grew up with, that's over with. What's wrong with not having any religion?
Yeah.
Nothing. It's great.
They didn't leave because they weren't brought up in it in the first place. I think there's a sense that Gen Z was liberated from the influence of Christianity. And in reality, I think what happened was they were liberated from the 1970s and 80s form of Christianity that maybe we were raised in, where there's a wholesale rejection of Christian teachings from within the church. They're blank slate. They're starting from scratch.
In Catholic and Protestant, this was just everybody folded together of like, we now, Billy Graham and Fulton Sheen are gone, unfortunately, and now we're gonna adjust to society. And we need to mention, it's got millions of views now, but I highly encourage the listeners to listen to Tucker Carlson's interview with Bishop Barron.
Yeah.
Phenomenal exchange, especially on this topic of what we're talking about, big picture, but also just specifically the 70s and 80s versus now and what's happening. Really good conversation. Anyways, Bishop Barron and Tucker.
I don't have any stats, but I know that what I've been seeing trending, it seems like that there's a lot of not only converts to specifically for Catholics and the Catholic Church, but there's a lot of really strong evangelical churches that are gaining in their congregations. And at this, like, especially some of it has to do with political stuff or what people see as political, but it's the pastors who were bold and were not afraid to stand up about, transgender ideology stuff and speaking out against that and speaking out against closing churches and this, that, and the other. But at the same time, you're seeing that all of these, what we have a lot of in Austin, as I'm sure you won't be surprised about, is these, what would you call them? Woke churches, for lack of a better way of putting it, where you don't even have to go inside of this church to kind of experience their worship service, because what you're finding is they've got all of this ideology that's been politicized, that's leaning towards secular ideology, posted outside of their church. In this church, well, you could use the "in this house we,"
In this church,
but
all
in
are
this
welcome.
church, they have the line of pride flags, however many there are now, all listed, but they're not going to talk about actual scriptural references to any of these things, or they
Right.
will, but they're going to be twisted, which is what the enemy wants. And those churches are seeing people declining in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that was the theme of the 70s and 80s, which is the churches will conform to the world under the misguided notion that if we're just like them and we adjust and we lighten up a little bit, they're all going to join us.
Yeah.
And what happened was everybody looks and says, "You don't believe any of that. Why would I join that? You don't stand for anything." And so the stronger that the church, certainly we can speak for the Catholic Church, the stronger the Catholic Church has been over the last 15 or 20 years compared to the previous 20 years has been night and day, and it's attractive. And there is a little bit, especially with Catholicism, of like, y'all still believe that? Like
Yeah.
you're against IVF, you're against contraception.
You're
Like,
consistent.
Aren't you kind of nuts? So there's that interest in a world where I think it was Bishop Barron that said the reason young people are attracted to it is because they've been let down by secularism,
Yeah, no doubt.
and which is a great, very commonsensical point. Okay. So the reality is, we've been lied to that young people don't really trust the experts anymore, and they will turn to other things. So secularism is the answer to the world. Theocracy is evil. But all of a sudden, you're not happy, and you start to reevaluate why you're not happy.
Have you come across any statistics on the Church of Scientology and if their numbers are getting smaller?
They had to grow after Top Gun 2, in all fairness.
I mean, I'm an honorary member.
Oh,
Kind of like,
this is news to me.
I'm an honor. I don't believe
I
that
don't-
for a second.
I don't know how Scientology is doing, but I think the truth component is real. For 20 years ago, we had the new atheists, right? And it was Dawkins and Dennett and Hitchens and Harris, and they're very scientific approach where, if you really know anything, all the experts know that religion just evolved through purely natural processes, and sooner or later it'll all be gone.
It's very boring, by the way.
Yes.
All the new atheists, there's like, number one, it's not new. Number two, this is boring.
And they thought they were edgy,
Yeah.
and they weren't. They thought they were smarter than everybody, and they weren't. And now this gets in, I guess, to the COVID thing. Like we've been lied to about so much, and if the experts were wrong on COVID, on Russian collusion, if they were wrong on boys can be girls, well, maybe they were wrong about everything they said about religion too. We've got this push for technocracy, like we just can create all the answers through science and technology, and it has failed to make people happy. I think the new atheists believed their own hype, and that's a dangerous thing to do.
You do have a good point in here, and it's interesting. We love the boomers. Our parents are boomers. We love our parents, all that good stuff. Many 40 Days for Life leaders are boomers, and we love all of you. But it is interesting that with that said,
With all due respect.
they rebelled against their parents, and now the trend is for the rebellion is from your parents, but it's in the opposite direction.
Right.
And so I know for my siblings, and my parents would say this, me and my siblings were way more religious than my parents were. And then they came along like just later in life. It was just like, one of those things. We were getting married, we were having kids, and it was like they were happy about it, but it was, I think that they were a little surprised on some fronts. But I think that all of a sudden you coming in and saying, I'm going to the traditional Latin Mass at the Catholic Church. And you're like, but we're fallen away Methodists. What's the matter with you? I do think there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's very, very interesting because what happened was the new atheists just said, we're going to roll our eyes at people and talk about how dumb Christians are. Well, that led to people being interested in the intellectual tradition of Christianity, which is genius and brilliant in some of the greatest minds in the history of the world, the greatest minds. And, you know, when you rip away, which I do think there's a huge attack on intellectualism in general, and we can rant about the colleges and all this, but I firmly believe people need to go to college. It's just like, and the people yelling, this is where I totally disagree with Matt Walsh. He's like yelling at everybody about, you know, you don't need college and college is dumb. They have the best lawyers in the world at Daily Wire, and they all went to college. And, you know, when he takes his kid to the ER, he sure as heck hopes that the doctor went to college. So I do think the anti-college thing is easily translated into an anti-intellectual thing. I just got to sound better than you. I got to make a better point. I got to get more clicks, and therefore I'm right. And that's what the New Atheists did, and it was stupid. It was a mistake. And that causes people to actually think and, you know, ponder faith and reason and where do I come from and why am I here? And is all this just chaos, you know? And things start to make sense from a Christian perspective. Then you sprinkle in there Jordan Peterson's aggressive flirtation with not converting to Catholicism, yet teaching classes on it. And it just makes it more interesting and more intriguing. The fact that he's teaching about it and the fact that he's not converting is both intriguing. And so, you know, that whole thing is something that leads people to think and not just be told you're an idiot.
Yeah. We see actual intellectuals now embracing the faith, and intellectuals who, like Jordan Peterson, maybe not embracing it, but open to it, not dismissing it, not ridiculing it. And we've got a great quote here from Sydney Johnston, who is 30 years old. She said, "I was such a workaholic, but during the pandemic, I started thinking and revisiting my criticisms of Christianity. I just started reading the Bible, and I found so much wisdom and beauty and meaning." I think this is happening on a large scale, but one of the things that's fascinating here, too, is if you look through history, whenever there's a plague, there's an epidemic, a pandemic, whatever, people go back to church, right? There's no atheists in foxholes. The pandemic's done, and the numbers are still growing. People are still returning to the faith.
Which is the opposite of 9/11. Everybody was
thinking
God
that.
bless you. God have mercy on us. Jesus is going to get us through this. God's going to get us through this.
The churches were so full for like 3 weeks,
great.
and then not anymore.
And it never came back until later, but it just continued to kind of decline. And, I do think there was a little bit of America is God going on there.
Yes.
When we invaded Iraq.
Yes,
And George W. Bush had probably a little bit too much credibility. He was sent by the Messiah. And people do that to Trump.
Yes,
There's a big,
for sure.
There's a big Christian, the God arrives on Air Force One thing that's gone out there. But yeah, it can be very, very dangerous. But that one just died. This one actually led to, the difference may be time. People had a lot of time, like this lady, during the pandemic.
And I would also say, I don't think anybody would disagree with the argument that the church has done a disastrous job teaching the faith over the last 5-6 decades.
Well, I would go back 10 or 15 years. It's been pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. But there's also, I think,
mainly because of Protestants who became Catholic, if you're looking at it from the Catholic perspective.
Sure.
Because we have these huge networks of people that are like, you're sitting on a gold mine, but you're a loser. This is like cultural for you. But we read the Bible, and now we want to become Catholic, and we're going to put out books and tapes and all that other thing.
They filled a vacuum. It was so bad for so long, and now, for all of the bad things that the internet brings us, the internet has given people like Bishop Barron, who you mentioned, there's all sorts of people who have platforms to teach what the faith actually teaches. I mean, if it's 1985 and you want to learn the faith at a deep and meaningful level, where do you go? Like the library, maybe? Are you going to try reading books that are 100? I don't know. But we've got people now who are able to take the ancient wisdom of Christianity and present it in a format that is accessible to young people, and they're eating it up.
There's two people too. One is evangelical, and then the other is Catholic. Producer John, is it Strobel? Who's the Christ?
Lee Strobel?
Yeah, the reporter.
Yeah.
The Case for Christ.
Case for Christ, yes. The Case for Christ. So I would say him.
Texan.
Yep. God bless him.
God bless him.
But the whole like, this is I have atheist friends, and this happened to me a lot in college where they're like, the Catholic Church, blah 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 blah, and they're like, it's just built on I don't believe it. I just don't believe the faith part. And my response would always be like, yeah, but you're limiting the church. It's not that Catholicism is more faithful than you or calling you to have faith. It's that it's smarter than you. They always get ticked off. I was like, they're better at you than you. You're a self-proclaimed intellectual, but you block off the whole notion that there can be anything divine or that there's a natural order. You're an idiot. That if you would actually read, you would realize you're not an intellectual.
And use reason.
You're closed-minded. Yeah.
Aquinas put all of his arguments couched in, here are all the best objections to what I'm about to say.
He argues for atheism better than the atheists, and then he refutes himself. Summa.
This
Great
is where
book.
it's always fun when you get into, I don't know if debate's the right word, but a dialogue. We love the word dialogue, right? Dialogue with someone who's a non-believer, and you make a point, and you can tell that they just Googled the ontological argument.
But
Wait,
look,
you didn't hear about this 2 minutes ago. You just Googled it, and now you're trying to tell me.
But those two guys, the last 20 years, Bishop Barron and Lee Strobel, they both started. Do you know what Bishop Barron's first YouTube video? I mean, now people can look at it. His following is insane. Do you know what his first YouTube video was on?
I do not.
Do you?
I don't.
He reviewed The Departed,
Nice.
Oh.
the movie.
Wow.
He reviewed it because Jack Nicholson is clearly the devil. And it's a 7-minute video. He actually retweeted it on the whatever 22nd anniversary or whatever he got on YouTube. But that was genius. Lee Strobel came out by saying, I didn't believe in God. God's not real. And it was starting with, if you want to talk about, we need to meet people where they're at, there was that intrigue. Why is this Catholic priest on YouTube talking about The Departed? And then he gets into it and he's like, he talks about how good it is. He talks about the part where they really criticize the church and how it's valid. This is the cost of the scandals.
Yeah.
He talks about how it's not as good as Goodfellas, which I hold that opinion. And it's just now he's just talking well, Goodfellas is not as good as Goodfellas, obviously. And
People are writing in to criticize his banter.
yes, I'm sure he's gay. If we ever interviewed him, which would be awesome, his stories would crush ours, right? Because the hardcore Catholics are way crazier than the people we deal with. Okay, so that's just one of those things where there's a vacuum, and as Fulton Sheen said, if the church puts it down, the world will pick it up, and that can only last so long before you want to circle back.
Speaking of vacuums,
Beauty.
Oh my goodness.
We live in an ugly world, actually. The architecture, mercy, you walk into some of these churches that were built in the 70s.
Oh gosh.
How much weed did they smoke at those meetings?
I remember a church in Miami that I went to that actually looked like a spaceship, and inside and out. And it was so distracting to me that I felt like I didn't even fulfill my obligation that weekend.
Well,
I couldn't focus on anything that we were hearing from Scripture. I couldn't listen to the homily. It was so ugly.
Do you know who orchestrated that?
Who?
Satan.
The ugly churches.
If you're in a church and you're distracted
By its
aesthetically
ugliness, yeah.
away from God,
Yeah.
it's not like the atheist built the church. No. That was the devil. He's trying to distract you in church. And of course, it's the opposite in real churches that are beautiful. You could be ticked off. You could be mad at your kids. You could be mad at Fauci. You could be mad at whatever. And you walk into St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, and you're just lifted up to heaven. You walk into St. Peter's, you walk into some little rinky-dink, church that was built by Polish immigrants. It's absolutely stunning because they poured all their, money into it. It's just like throwing yourself in the ocean. It's just like a cleansing. It's beautiful, and you're totally transformed. If you go into a church feeling closer to God than you ever have, and 5 minutes later you're distracted and you're looking around and you're like, what is that?
What were they thinking?
Is that a crucifix? Is that what?
Yeah.
What happened to Our Lady?
Oh,
Did
yeah.
she go in the same thing as Jeff Goldblum and turn into the Fly? What is that? And that is satanic. And I think what they did to a lot of those churches was satanic. It totally distracted away from Christ.
And it spreads into every facet of the culture as well,
Yeah.
right? It's not just church architecture, it's civil architecture. That's why I love the Trump thing where we're going to build all the federal buildings in the classical style. It's like a great thing for America. I don't care what anybody says about Trump. The man has the best taste that there is. Like the parade was cool for the army. Like all this stuff is great.
Have you been in Trump Tower?
No.
It's pretty amazing. And it's amazing from the standpoint that it's 45 years old. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like a really nice ballpark.
Okay.
And somebody's like, yeah, we built this 25 years ago. You're like, oh my gosh, it's even better now. Like,
Yeah.
aged well. So Trump Tower is pretty awesome, by the way.
Architecture, art, fashion, we're surrounded by ugliness. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's something that measures like what colors cars are sold in and what colors corporate logos are in. And the color range has been shrinking and it's almost all black, white, and gray. now.
Yeah, I've noticed
And like
that.
this deadens the soul. It's
Yes.
miserable.
Yeah.
And I think that has created a longing in people's hearts. We talked about Sidney Johnston before, who revisited her criticisms of Christianity during the pandemic, and she said, "There's something so beautiful and transcendent about the rituals and the ancient history. It calls to people. There's a vacuum. We need beauty. We can't survive in this. Everything looks like the Soviet Union."
And to say that a beautiful church that has gold and marble and all that is somehow a distraction is just not acknowledging that we don't really build the church for ourselves.
Yeah.
That it's for the King of Kings and he deserves gold if we can afford it, and he deserves marble and everything else. And just the beauty, that beauty points to God. And I think that is so important, and it should really should be an immersion when you go in.
Beauty points to God, and this is why a lot of, I think we would say our faith in Catholicism specifically is very sensual, because it engages all of the senses, and that includes, that's why we have the smells and the bells and stuff, but that includes the art and the architecture of these buildings. And it's not that if you have a poor, a church that doesn't have a lot of art or can't afford whatever, that God doesn't exist or that the faith is not strong in there. But it's that if we should build a church to try to reflect the beauty of God as best we can, even though that's impossible here on earth.
I was once in a church that was absolutely stunning, beautiful, and at the end of there weren't that many people there, but at the end of Mass, the priest said, "Oh, and we're gonna have, just some of our parish needs." And this is a beautiful old traditional church. He's like, we do have a big expense coming up. We need to restore the organ. It's about $300,000. He said it like the rose bushes are out and we need, And I'm just like, how in the world is this place going to raise $300,000 on a whim? Because you got to restore your organ. Mm-hmm. And I later learned that one guy was visiting. He heard that. He walked up and gave him a check. Walked out.
There you
And
go.
I'm like, so when somebody's like, do you really need an organ? Can't you just have a piano? You're like, people are longing for this.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the church was gorgeous. The guy, it's not like he'd been going there for 40 years and he's like, not on my watch. It was just like, absolutely. We're restoring the culture. So that was a fun story.
Beautiful.
Okay. I lost where we are.
Goodness, number 4.
Oh, goodness.
If you haven't noticed, we were doing the transcendentals. We covered truth, we covered beauty.
Beauty
Now we
and
move on to goodness.
Yes.
All these describe you, Steve. By the way, truth, beauty, and goodness. Yeah. With beauty obviously being number one. Okay. Secular humanism doesn't satisfy. That's another great t-shirt. Okay. So this is Andrea Lawson. She's 30. I was wrestling with mental illness and the meaning of life, and those are questions I could not answer without religion. My mental health improved very quickly, and church showed me a different way of looking at life. I just became less. Self-centered, and that made me a lot happier.
Go figure. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Always need to be careful here. Somebody will write in and be like, you can't just reduce mental illness.
Right.
We got it.
Right.
You got it.
Mental
You
illness
got
is a
it.
real thing, but this is someone who suffered from it and did find healing.
But
through
thinking,
Christ.
there's tons of psychiatrists that say thinking about yourself will always lead to you only thinking about your problems.
Yeah.
And when you think about your problems, you inflate them. And when you inflate them, you're not happy.
Yep.
You're anxious and
Or
afraid.
depressed. Yep.
So, okay. Even as Islam spreads throughout Europe, definitely need to do a podcast on that. There have been a wave of Muslims converting to Christianity. This has actually really taken off.
And it's rare historically. Like I think if you look at the history of the last 1,000 years, it is rare that you see conversions of Muslims to Christianity, but it's happening now.
And this kind of started to flare up like 15 years ago, like post-Iraq war kind of thing, or in the middle of the Iraq war. And I always thought it was like a sensational thing, like she escaped Iraq and then she got out of the ideology and now she's, a Baptist preacher's wife. And I always thought it was kind of, oh, that's fun. That's 1 in a billion that happens. And, that's neat. And they have a book. But it just seems very common now that you have a lot of Muslims converting. So, I mean,
Some of this, I think, gets back. Pope Benedict spoke well on this. And there's this concept that in Islam, God is pure will. And certainly God has complete will. God can do anything he wants. He's omnipotent. But Islam sort of identifies God primarily with pure will, can do what he wants. There doesn't necessarily need to be any reason behind it. If God says A is good today and it's bad tomorrow, then it's the very nature of truth itself can change, whereas Christianity would maybe more identify God as being pure love. And we've got this great story from National Catholic Register. I'll just quote it here. It was while accompanying her dying husband from Algeria to a hospital in Belgium that Marie Anne was overwhelmed by the humanity and the compassion shown to her by a Catholic nurse, to the point of wanting to know more about the figure of Jesus. So she's with her husband dies. She's getting a little too cozy with Christianity. And so she is going to be promised, quote, promised to a man who would re-educate her in the Muslim faith. Instead, she fled to France and was baptized.
wow, that's awesome.
Beautiful. And this is one of the many reasons why the church, modern and in history, has opened hospitals, opened schools, is to evangelize.
Yeah.
Is obviously we are corporal beings. We have to care for our physical needs, but also the spiritual needs, and they're just as important, more important to save your soul. And the hospital systems and schools is a great way to do this. So
This is where Mother Teresa takes flack from both kind of the left and the right, if you will. She didn't set out with the Missionaries of Charity as like a robust program of proselytization. But it turns out that when you're dying and you're pulled out of the gutter by a stranger who tends to your wounds and cleans you up and treats you as a person, conversions tend to follow.
yeah.
Shout out to St. Boniface, the patron saint of Germany. So when he first went there, they worshipped some of the trees, but they had a special sacred tree. And he brought out an axe and he said, I'm going to cut it down. They said, you can't do that. The gods are going to strike you down by lightning. And he said, okay, that's fine. I'll cut down the tree. And if nothing happens to me, then I will baptize all of you. And if I get struck by lightning, then you're proven your God is real. And so there's a famous picture of him cutting down the tree, and then he baptized like 5,000 people. It's really awesome. But it was like a big scene. Like everybody's coming out like, this guy's going to get electrocuted.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be awesome. And I like that image because what it is cutting down the new atheism and saying this is all a bunch of BS, and this is what makes sense. And this explains why you're here. It gives you your dignity. It offers you salvation, and it gives you peace of heart and mind. And I think that we're so timid to like, well, they really like the tree, and people really believe in the tree, and it means a lot to them, and all that stuff. And you just got to walk up and cut it down.
It reminds me, and forgive me for stumbling here, Elisha, where they're with the prophets of Baal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your God's going to the bathroom. Maybe that's why he can't do it. Maybe he's taking a nap. Maybe he left town.
Right.
It's true. It's very, very true. And that doesn't mean we need to go out there and be abrasive all the time. But there is this tolerance can really hinder society, as we've seen.
It's always delightful when you go through and find some of the deeper meaning in scripture that's not apparent, like sort of like how triumphant the Gospel of Mark is, that like talking about things like the good news are because that's how the Roman military victories were hailed. Like, hey, buddy, I got some good news for you. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. Take that.
Hallelujah. I like that song. Okay, let's close with one of the greatest quotes ever from G.K. Chesterton, who himself was an atheist, and then an agnostic, and then an Anglican, and then a Catholic, and mentored C.S. Lewis. Great guy. Christianity has died many times and risen again, for it had a God who knew his way out of the grave. I love that.
There you go.
Old G.K. Chesterton. We love you, buddy. All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Heather. Please rate, review, share this podcast. Let us know some positive anecdotes on the YouTube page, or write in podcast@40daysforlife.com of how you've seen sort of a resurgence of faith being alive in America and around the world. Leave that for us so that we can read it on the air and give some positive encouragement to our listeners. So thank you, and we will see you next time. God bless you.